Is this what you call jollof rice?
The plate shattered against the wall before anyone could blink. Morenike's hand was still trembling from the throw as the rice slid down the cream-colored wallpaper and dropped in clumps to the floor. Nobody moved. Bessie froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Chief Adebayo lowered his newspaper an inch, then raised it again, choosing silence over confrontation. "This is what you call jollof rice?" Morenike's voice cracked through the dining room like a whip. "I have eaten better food at a roadside buka." Zainab did not flinch. She rose from her seat, walked calmly to the wall, picked up a rag, and began wiping the mess as though she were cleaning a spill from a toddler, not the remains of an insult thrown by her mother-in-law. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She simply cleaned, served a fresh plate, and placed it gently in front of Morenike. "I will do better next time, Ma," she said softly. The room exhaled. Tunde stared at his wife, torn between admiration and shame, because he knew what everyone else in that house refused to admit. This had been happening for months, and he had said nothing. By the time Zainab walked into the Adebayo family, 3 women before her had already walked out. Everyone in Ibadan whispered that those women were simply not strong enough, not patient enough, not wife material. Nobody dared to whisper the truth, that the real obstacle in that house never left her bedroom on the ground floor, and her name was Morenike. If this story is gripping you already, smash that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will leave you speechless. 3 years earlier, Tunde had brought home a woman named Aisha, bright-eyed, outspoken, the kind of woman who finished her own sentences and never apologized for having opinions. Morenike disliked her from the first meal. "She talks too much for a woman who wants to marry into this family," Morenike told Tunde one night, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Aisha endured 4 months of subtle digs disguised as advice, comments about her clothes, her laughter, even the way she pronounced certain words. She left without a scene. She simply stopped answering Tunde's calls. Then came Funke, a lawyer, ambitious, articulate, unwilling to shrink herself for anyone. Morenike called her proud, disrespectful, a woman who would never bow to tradition. The arguments multiplied until one evening, Funke stood in the living room and said plainly, "Tunde, I cannot marry your mother, and right now, that is exactly what you are asking me to do." She walked out and never returned her texts. Finally, there was Deborah, gentle, eager to please, desperate to be accepted. She cooked Morenike's favorite dishes. She complimented her wrappers. She agreed with everything. Still, nothing was enough. One morning, Tunde woke to find a folded letter on the pillow beside him. Deborah had packed her things in the night and disappeared from his life without a goodbye. After Deborah, Tunde stopped believing in marriage altogether. He buried himself in spreadsheets and audits, convinced that love was a door that simply would not open for him. Then, at a charity fundraiser for underprivileged school children, he met Zainab Bello. She didn't seem dazzled by his expensive watch or her polished English. She spoke to the children first, crouching to their level, laughing at their jokes before she ever noticed Tunde standing beside her. "You don't seem to be interested in impressing anyone," he said, half teasing. Zainab turned to him, calm as still water. "If I ever have to compete for someone's love, then I've already lost it. I'm not interested in competitions, Mr. Adebayo." The words followed him home that night, replaying over and over, refusing to let him sleep. Months passed. Their conversations deepened into something steady, something real. Tunde found himself laughing again, planning again, hoping again. The day he knelt down with a small velvet box, Zainab didn't immediately say yes. "Before I answer," she said quietly, "is there anything about your family I should know?" Tunde hesitated. He thought of Aisha's silence, Funke's sharp exit, Deborah's folded letter. He thought of his mother's voice, sharp as broken glass, and his own cowardice in every single one of those moments. He finally said, "My mother can be particular, but I'll handle it. I promise." It was a lie built on hope, and somewhere deep down he already knew it. They married in a small ceremony 6 months later. Morenike smiled for the photographs, hugged Zainab in front of the guests, whispered congratulations into her ear. But guests who looked closely noticed her eyes never quite reached the smile. Chief Adebayo, watching his wife from across the reception hall, leaned toward his son and said, "Marriage is not a competition, Tunde, but in this house, your mother has never lost one. Be careful." Tunde laughed it off as an old man's joke. He would remember those words later, when laughter was the last thing left in him. If you have ever watched a storm gathering on the horizon while everyone around you kept dancing, you already know exactly what was coming for this family. Drop a comment below telling us which woman you think was the strongest, Aisha, Funke, or Deborah, because Zainab was about to face something none of them ever survived. 2 weeks after the wedding, Morenike called Tunde with tears thick in her voice. "Son, the roof in my old room is leaking badly. Bisi and I, we just need somewhere to stay, just for a short while." Tunde, ever the dutiful son, agreed without consulting his wife. That short while would last far longer than anyone in that house could have imagined, and it would test every promise Tunde had ever made. The suitcases never left. What started as 2 bags in a guest room became a wardrobe, then a second wardrobe, then Bisi's name on a courier package addressed to her permanent residence. Within a month, Morenike had rearranged the kitchen shelves, replaced Zainab's curtains with her own, and informed the housekeeper that meals would now follow her schedule, not the lady of the house's. Zainab said nothing at first. She believed patience would soften things. She was wrong. "Why is the rice taking so long?" Morenike snapped one afternoon, standing in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed. "In my day, a wife had food ready before her husband even asked." "I had a parent-teacher meeting that ran late, Ma," Zainab explained calmly, tying her apron. "Excuses. This is why I told Tunde to marry a woman who stays home." Bisi, lounging at the counter, scrolling her phone, smirked without looking up. Maybe if she spent less time at that school and more time at home, this wouldn't be a problem. Zainab swallowed the retort rising in her throat and kept stirring the pot. It became a pattern. Every dish was too salty or too plain. Every outfit too tight or too plain for a married woman. Every late evening at work was treated as evidence of neglect, never as the demanding job it was. When Zainab brought home a small gift for Bisi's birthday, Bisi held it up and laughed. "This is the best you could do. Maybe school administrators don't earn much after all." Tunde, returning from work just in time to hear it, opened his mouth, then closed it again, choosing instead to ask if dinner was ready. Zainab's eyes flickered toward him, searching for the husband who promised to handle this. She found only silence. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, comment below. Zainab's story is about to feel painfully familiar. The accusation started small. A missing necklace, which Morenike insisted Zainab had misplaced on purpose to cause confusion, a broken vase blamed on Zainab's carelessness, though she had been at work the entire day it shattered. Money disappeared from Chief Adebayo's study, and somehow, without evidence, suspicion always drifted toward the daughter-in-law who kept her head down and her mouth shut. "I never said she stole it," Morenike told Tunde one night, voice dripping with false innocence. "I only said it's strange that things go missing since she arrived." "Mother, please," Tunde said wearily from another long day of pretending not to notice. "I'm not accusing anyone's son. I'm just saying what I see." It was never a direct attack. It was always a suggestion, a raised eyebrow, a sentence left in the air long enough to plant doubt. And slowly, doubt began to work its way between husband and wife, exactly as Morenike intended.
Zainab started staying later at school, not because of extra work, but because home no longer felt like a place to return to. She cried quietly in her car some evenings before walking through the front door with a composed face, refusing to let them see her break. One night, after a particularly cruel comment about her inability to conceive within the first year of marriage, Zainab finally confronted Tunde in their bedroom. "Your mother told the neighbors I might be barren," she said, her voice trembling for the first time, "in front of the children at the gate, Tunde, in front of children." "She didn't mean it like that," Tunde mumbled, exhausted from another long day of pretending not to notice. "Then how did she mean it?" Zainab raised her voice, cracking under the weight of months of swallowed pain. Tunde had no answer. He simply looked away. This is the moment so many viewers wait for, when the silence finally breaks. But before it does, smash that like button if you believe Zainab deserved better than silence. The breaking point arrived on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Bisi stormed into the living room, phone in hand, face twisted with fury. "You disrespected my mother in front of her church friends today. She told me everything." Zainab sat calmly with a cup of tea, frowned. "I greeted your mother and asked if she needed anything before I left for work. That's all that happened, Bisi." "Don't lie to me." Bisi's voice climbed an octave, drawing Chief Adebayo's attention from his study. "You think because you wear nice clothes and work in an office that you are better than us? You will not disrespect this family." "I have never disrespected anyone in this house," Zainab said, rising to her feet, her composure finally cracking at the edges. "I have swallowed insult after insult since the day I arrived." "Swallowed?" Bisi laughed bitterly, stepping closer, finger pointed inches from Zainab's face. "You think you are suffering? Wait until I show you suffering." She shoved Zainab hard against the side table. A vase wobbled and crashed to the floor, glass scattering across the tiles. Zainab stumbled but caught herself on the wall, more stunned than hurt. The room froze. And then, for the first time in his entire marriage, Tunde moved. He crossed the living room in 3 strides, stepped between his sister and his wife, and his voice, when it finally came, was louder than anyone in that house had ever heard it. "Enough!" Bisi staggered back, shocked. Morenike appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion, her mouth already open to defend her daughter, until she saw her son's face. It was not the face of the boy who always backed down. It was the face of a man who had finally run out of silence to give.
That night, the house was silent in a way it had never been before. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of a family waiting to see what would happen next. Zainab sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around herself, while Tunde paced the floor, his earlier outburst still echoing in his own ears. He had never raised his voice in that house. He had never felt the strange, frightening relief of finally speaking. "I'm not asking you to choose between me and your mother," Zainab said quietly, breaking the silence first. "I never wanted that. I'm asking you to protect what we promised to build together. A home, not a battlefield where I am expected to lose every single day." Tunde sat beside her, his head in his hands. "I thought if I kept the peace, things would get better." "There was never any peace, Tunde. There was only my silence mistaken for peace." Her voice was steady now, stripped of anger, full only of exhaustion and truth. "I need you to become the man you promised to be on our wedding day. Not your mother's son first, my husband first." The words settled into him like a verdict he could no longer appeal. If you've ever had to remind someone of the promise they made you, like this video right now, because Tunde's next move is the moment everything changes. The next morning, Tunde called a family meeting before anyone had even finished breakfast. Morenike sat stiffly, already preparing her defense. Bisi crossed her arms, certain her brother would side with blood over a wife of barely a year. Chief Adebayo said nothing, But for the first time in years, he looked directly at his son with something like anticipation. "This house has a new rule," Tunde began, his voice calm but unshakable. "Zainab is my wife. She will be respected in this home the same way I respect mother. Anyone who cannot do that is welcome to visit but not to live here." "You would choose her over your own mother?" Morenike's voice cracked with disbelief. "I'm not choosing her over you," Tunde said. "I'm choosing to stop pretending that what happens in this house is acceptable. It never was." Bisi scoffed and stormed out. Morenike sat frozen, stunned into uncharacteristic silence. Chief Adebayo, watching his son finally stand the way he himself never had, gave a single, quiet nod of approval. It was not an instant transformation. Morenike sulked for weeks. Small comments still slipped through old habits, but every time they did, Tunde addressed them immediately, calmly, firmly, and slowly the house began to breathe differently. A year passed, and Bisi, eager to escape what she called her brother's wife-controlled household, married a businessman from Akure and moved away with stars in her eyes, certain that married life would finally be hers to enjoy without interference. It only took 3 months for her excitement to curdle. Her new mother-in-law, a formidable woman named Aduni, began the same campaign Bisi herself had once led. Bisi's cooking was criticized at every meal. Her clothes were called inappropriate. Her schedule was questioned. Her loyalty doubted. Her every move measured against an invisible standard she could never meet. "Why does it take you so long to wash these plates?" Aduni snapped one evening, exactly the way Morenike snapped at Zainab. "In my day, a wife had everything done before her husband even asked." Bisi stood frozen at the sink, the words landing with a strange, sickening familiarity. She had said almost the exact same thing once in another kitchen to another woman who never deserved it. The accusations escalated. A missing earring became theft. A late evening at the market became infidelity. Whispers to neighbors became public humiliation, the same way Morenike's whispers had once followed Zainab through her own gate. One night, after Aduni accused her, in front of her own husband's friends, of being unable to keep a proper home, Bisi locked herself in the bathroom and cried until her throat ached. For the first time, she understood. Every insult, every false accusation, every cold dinner served with contempt, she finally understood exactly what she had done. If karma has ever caught up with someone you know, type yes in the comments right now, because Bisi was only getting started. She arrived at her parents' house unannounced one Sunday afternoon, eyes swollen, voice shaking, as she recounted month after month of torment to a mother who recognized every single detail. Morenike sat very still as her daughter spoke, watching the pain on her face, hearing her own old words echoed back to her through her daughter's suffering. For the first time, she did not offer advice, she did not defend tradition. She simply reached for Bisi's hand, her own eyes filling with tears she did not bother to hide. "I did this," Morenike whispered. "Not your mother-in-law, me. I taught you that this was normal." Weeks later, Bisi visited Zainab alone, without being asked, without being forced. She stood in the doorway, hands trembling, and said the words she once believed she would never need to say. "I'm sorry for everything. I didn't understand what I was doing to you until it was done to me." Zainab studied her for a long moment, then opened the door wider. "Come in, let's talk." Soon after, Morenike followed, sitting across from the daughter-in-law she had tormented for over a year. "I thought I was protecting my son," she admitted quietly. I never realized I was the one hurting him most and hurting you." Zainab did not gloat. She did not demand more apologies than were offered. She simply nodded and said, "Thank you for saying that," and meant it. Months later, the family gathered for dinner again. The same dining room, the same chairs, the same table where a plate had once shattered against the wall. But this time, Morenike complimented the jollof rice without being asked. Besi laughed freely without cruelty hiding behind her words. Chief Adebayo watched his family with quiet satisfaction, finally at peace in his own home. Under the table, Tunde reached for Zainab's hand. Morenike noticed, and for the first time, she smiled, a real smile, free of judgment. Some families are broken by pride. Others are rebuilt by humility. The Adebayos learned the hard way that love only grows when control finally lets go. If this story touched you, hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Drop a like to support the channel and tell us in the comments, should Zainab have forgiven them this easily or should she have made them wait longer? We'll see you in the next story.